The city stood tall like a proud chief dressed in glass and steel. Its towers touched the clouds, shining under the hot African sun. Cars moved quickly along wide roads, horns echoing like restless birds. Yet beneath those tall buildings, the old world still breathed. In the narrow streets behind the banks and offices, women sold roasted corn beside clay pots blackened by firewood. The scent of palm oil and spices rose into the air. At the edge of the city, sacred compounds rested quietly, guarded by ancient trees whose roots twisted deep into the earth. The elders often said, "A tree without roots will fall when the first storm comes." Even in this modern place, the spirits of the ancestors were not forgotten. They were remembered in whispers, in morning prayers, and in the careful way people greeted the land before building on it. Glass towers cast long shadows in the evening, and those shadows seemed to touch the red soil where generations had once walked barefoot. In this land, marriage was not a small thing between two beating hearts. It was a bridge built between families. When a woman married, her laughter did not travel alone. It carried her father's pride, her mother's sacrifice, and her clan's honor. When a man married, he did not take only a wife. He welcomed her ancestors into his own household. People often said, when two drums beat together, they must learn each other's rhythm. Marriage was that rhythm. It joined bloodlines like rivers meeting in one place. The joy of a wedding belonged to the whole community, and so did its shame if it failed. Young couples might speak of love and dreams, but elders spoke of duty and respect. A marriage was a rope woven by many hands. If one hand pulled too hard, the rope could snap. That was why everyone watched carefully when a wedding was near. It was common to see young men in fine suits checking their smartphones, laughing at messages from friends. Beside them, an old drummer might sit beneath a mango tree, beating sacred rhythms passed down from his grandfather. In one hand, the future blinked on bright screens. In the other, the past echoed through drums made of carved wood and stretched skin. The people lived between these two worlds. They posted wedding pictures online, yet still poured libation on the ground before saying their vows. They believed in progress, but they feared forgetting who they were. The old ways did not shout. They simply remained. And above all stood the elders. They did not need loud voices to be obeyed. Their power rested in silence and memory. When they cleared their throats during a family meeting, everyone listened. When they nodded in approval, relief spread like cool rain. An elder once said, "A child may grow taller than the father, but he must never forget who showed him the path." These words shaped many homes. Young couples knew their lives were their own, yet never fully their own. The elders watched, not always with anger, but always with expectation. In this city lived a young woman named Amara. Her heart was gentle, like morning light over a calm river. From childhood, she had been taught to bow her head when elders spoke and to keep peace even when storms gathered inside her. Her mother often told her, "A woman's strength is not in shouting. It is in keeping her home steady." Amara believed this deeply. She dreamed of a marriage filled with laughter and soft evenings. She wanted love that felt safe, not loud. She believed that respect was sweeter than pride. To her, obedience was not weakness, it was honor. The man she chose was named Kofi. He was educated and confident, with eyes that held both ambition and kindness. He had studied in big universities where ideas were debated freely. He believed marriage should be a partnership, where two people walk side by side, not one behind the other. Yet Kofi was not careless with tradition. He greeted elders properly, bending slightly as custom required. He understood that culture was not a chain but a root. Still, he believed that once vows were spoken, a husband and wife should have space to build their own house of trust. Then there was Amara's mother, Mama Nala. She was a widow, strong as the baobab tree that survives many dry seasons. When her husband died years ago, she did not collapse. She rose. She sold fabric in the market from sunrise to sunset. She denied herself comfort so her daughter could attend good schools. People praised her everywhere she went. "Mama Nala is both mother and father," they would say. She carried those words like medals on her chest. But sacrifice had shaped her heart in quiet ways. Her daughter became her world, her purpose, her pride. Every decision she made was for Amara. Every prayer she whispered carried her daughter's name. Deep inside, though she rarely admitted it, Mama Nala believed no man could ever love her child as fiercely as she did. She had fought too hard, cried too much, and given up too many dreams to step aside easily. So when talk of marriage filled the air, she smiled for the guests. She praised Kofi's education and manners. Yet at night, when the house grew silent, she sat alone and stared at the wall. "The world is wide," she once murmured to herself, "and not all paths are safe." In her heart, love and fear began to sit beside each other like uneasy neighbors. And though the city lights shone brightly outside, an old shadow quietly began to grow within her. As the wedding day drew closer, something small began to change inside Mama Nala. It was not loud. It was not angry. It was quiet, like a crack forming inside a clay pot. She still woke early to prepare Amara's favorite meals. She still adjusted her daughter's head wrap before church. She still said, "My child, I only want what is best for you." But her words began to carry weight. One evening, as Amara sat beside her, folding new fabrics for her marriage chest, Mama Nala spoke softly. "Remember," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "a husband is a good thing. But a mother's house is your true home. Never forget where your strength comes from." Amara smiled gently. "I will never forget you, Mama." Mama Nala nodded, but her eyes searched her daughter's face as if looking for a promise deeper than words. "Do not let him change you," she continued. "Do not let his family silence you. If something feels wrong, you come back to me. Immediately." It sounded like care. It sounded like love. Yet beneath it was something tighter, a rope pulled just a little too firm. Amara began to notice how her mother asked questions. "Where are you going? Why did he say that? Why does he call so late?" Each question was small, but together they formed a net. Love, when mixed with fear, can slowly turn into ownership. And ownership does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers. The neighbors did not see this shadow. To them, Mama Nala was a hero. At the market, women gathered around her stall, shaking their heads in admiration. "You are a strong woman," one said. "You raised that girl alone. No one can love her the way you do." "Yes," another added. "A mother must never loosen her grip. The world is full of wolves." Mama Nala would lower her eyes modestly, but inside, those words grew like fire fed with dry wood. "She is right," she would think. "If I do not watch closely, who will?" Relatives visited often, bringing gifts and advice. "Do not let the husband's family take over," an aunt whispered one afternoon. "They will try. They always do." Mama Nala listened. She stored every warning inside her heart like precious coins. With each praise, her belief became stronger, that letting go would be foolish, even dangerous. By the time the wedding day arrived, the entire community buzzed with excitement. The ceremony was grand. Colorful fabrics flowed like rivers of red, gold, and deep blue. Women ululated with joy, their voices rising high into the sky. Drummers beat sacred rhythms that echoed through the streets, calling ancestors to witness the union. At the same time, cameras flashed. Young cousins streamed the event live on their phones. A modern love story unfolding under ancient blessings. An elder stood before the couple, pouring libation onto the earth. "Ancestors," he called, "see these children. Guide their steps. Let their home be strong." Kofi stood tall in his fine attire, his voice steady as he spoke his vows. Amara glowed beside him, her eyes bright with hope. The crowd cheered as rings were exchanged. Laughter filled the air. It seemed like the joining of two worlds, old and new dancing together without fear. And there, beside her daughter, stood Mama Nala. She smiled for the guests. She accepted their congratulations. She even placed her hand gently on Kofi's shoulder and said, "Take care of her." "I will, Mama," Kofi replied respectfully. "With all my heart." But as the celebration continued, something unsettled flickered behind her calm face. Her smile did not fully reach her eyes. While others saw joy, she felt a quiet trembling inside her chest. When it was time for Amara to leave with her husband, the drums grew louder. Women sang farewell songs passed down for generations, songs about daughters crossing into new homes, about mothers releasing what they once carried. Amara hugged her mother tightly. I will visit every week, she whispered. Mama Nala held her longer than expected. Her arms tightened, just slightly. Remember what I taught you, she murmured into her daughter's ear. A woman must be wise. As the car door closed and the vehicle slowly moved away, the crowd waved and laughed. Children ran after the car, shouting blessings. But Mama Nala did not wave. She stood firm, her feet planted deep in the soil like the ancient baobab tree that refuses to bend even when storms roar. The drums thundered around her, yet she remained still. An elder nearby watched her carefully. A tree must one day release its fruit, he said quietly to the man beside him. If it holds too tightly, the fruit will rot in its own branches. Mama Nala heard the drums. She heard the laughter fading into distance. But inside her heart, she made a silent promise. This is not the end of my watch, she thought. A mother's duty does not end at the wedding gate. And though the celebration sparkled like sunlight on water, a shadow lingered behind her steady eyes, a shadow that had not yet finished its work. A few days after the wedding, when the songs had faded and the guests had returned to their homes, Kofi stood in the center of the living room with excitement shining in his eyes. I have something to share, he said, holding Amara's hands gently. Mama Nala looked up from where she was folding wrappers. What is it, my son? Kofi smiled. We are traveling to the coast tomorrow. Just the two of us. A small honeymoon. A quiet place near the ocean. Amara's face lit up like sunrise. Mama, they say the water is clear like glass. We will rest, pray together, and begin our life in peace. The word peace hung sweetly in the air. Mama Nala nodded slowly. The coast is far, she said. Far from home. It is only for a few days, Kofi replied kindly. We need time alone. A journey meant for two souls alone. Alone. The word moved through Mama Nala's chest like a sharp wind. For a moment, her smile held steady. Then it trembled. Private? She asked softly. Yes, Mama, Amara answered gently. Just husband and wife. We want to understand each other better. Mama Nala forced a laugh. Of course. That is good. A home must be built on strong ground. But inside her, something shifted. The drums of farewell had not prepared her for this silence. A distant resort. No elders. No neighbors. No watchful eyes. That night, while Amara packed her dresses, Mama Nala stood at the doorway. You know, she began carefully, a new place can be confusing. You may need help settling. Kofi looked up. We will manage, Mama. I only want to help, she insisted. I have experience. I have seen many seasons. Sometimes young couples do not know the hidden dangers. Amara walked to her mother and touched her arm. Mama, we will be safe. Mama Nala nodded, but her fingers tightened slightly around her wrapper. Very well, she said. Call me when you arrive. Do not forget. Later that night, when the house grew quiet and the moonlight slipped through the window, Mama Nala sat alone on her bed. The walls felt closer than before. They are young, she whispered to herself. The world is wide and full of traps. Her eyes fell on her phone resting on the small wooden table. For a long time, she stared at it. A mother does not abandon her child at the riverbank, she murmured. She watches until the child learns to swim. Her fingers moved almost on their own. She searched for the name of the coastal resort. She studied the pictures: white sand, wide ocean, large rooms with open balconies. Without allowing doubt to breathe, she booked a suite. It is only to protect her, she told herself firmly. If nothing is wrong, then I will simply rest. But deep inside, even she knew that love had begun to dress itself in disguise. The next morning, the couple arrived at the coast. The journey had been long, but laughter filled their car. When they stepped out, the ocean stretched before them, vast and endless. The water sparkled under the sun, moving like a living thing breathing in and out. Amara gasped softly. It is beautiful. Kofi wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Here, there are no expectations. No meetings. No elders calling. Just you and me. The wind carried the smell of salt and freedom. Waves rolled forward and then retreated, as if bowing to the land. "The sea teaches us something," Kofi said, smiling. "It moves freely, yet it always returns." Amara leaned her head against him. "This is our beginning." They walked hand in hand toward the hotel entrance, their footsteps light on the white sand. In that moment, they felt united. The city seemed far away. The weight of tradition felt softer. Inside the bright lobby, chandeliers glittered above polished floors. Guests laughed. Suitcases rolled across smooth tiles. Kofi approached the front desk confidently. "Reservation for Mr. and Mrs. Kofi." Amara giggled shyly at hearing her new name spoken aloud. As the receptionist searched the computer, a familiar voice echoed behind them. "So this is where you chose to rest." Amara's heart skipped. They turned slowly. Mama Nala stood near the entrance, dressed neatly, her posture firm. Her eyes moved from her daughter to Kofi and back again. For a moment, the sound of the ocean seemed to disappear. "Mama," Amara whispered. Mama Nala walked forward calmly. "I thought it wise to ensure you arrived safely. The coast can be unpredictable." Kofi's jaw tightened, but he forced a polite smile. "Mama, you came all this way?" "A mother's feet do not grow tired when walking for her child," she replied smoothly. Amara looked from her husband to her mother, confusion rising inside her like a sudden tide. "We wanted privacy," Kofi said carefully. "And you shall have it," Mama Nala answered quickly. "I have my own room. I will not disturb you. I am only here for protection." But even as she spoke, her presence filled the space between them. Outside, a wave crashed harder than the others against the shore. The ocean that once promised freedom now felt watchful. Amara forced a smile, though her hands trembled slightly in Kofi's grip. "Mama, you should have told us." "I did not want to trouble you," Mama Nala said, her voice soft but unyielding. In that bright lobby, beneath glittering lights and distant sea breeze, the honeymoon that was meant for two had quietly become something else. And like a shadow that refuses to fade at sunset, Mama Nala stood firm, unmoved, convinced that what she had done was not interference, but love. That evening, the ocean roared louder than before, as if it sensed the tension rising between the three of them. Amara sat on the edge of the hotel bed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Through the balcony doors, she could see the waves crashing against the shore. The sound was strong, restless, like her own heart. Her mother's room was just down the hallway. Kofi stood near the window, staring at the horizon. His shoulders were straight, but the silence around him was heavy. "Mama means well," Amara said softly, breaking the quiet. Kofi did not turn immediately. "Does she?" he asked gently. Amara felt the words land like stones. She stood and walked closer to him. "She raised me alone," she said. "Everything I am is because of her. I cannot simply tell her to go away." Kofi looked at her now. His eyes were not angry, but they were hurt. "And what about us?" he asked quietly. "Is this not our beginning?" Amara's chest tightened. It felt as though two ropes were pulling her in opposite directions. On one side stood the woman who carried her for 9 months and fought the world for her survival. On the other stood the man she had chosen to build a future with. "I do not want to disrespect you," she whispered. "But I cannot disrespect her either." In many African homes, loyalty is sacred. A child is taught to honor the mother, even when the heart is confused. And now Amara stood in the middle of two sacred loyalties, unsure which step would bring peace and which would bring shame. Kofi took a deep breath. "I understand her sacrifice," he said. "I respect it. But respect should not mean we have no space to breathe." He forced a small smile. "I will not fight her. Not here. Not now." Inside, his pride felt wounded. This honeymoon had been his gift to his wife, a private beginning. Yet now, even the walls felt crowded. Still, he chose patience. "My father once told me," Kofi said quietly, "a man who shouts to prove his strength has already lost it." Amara looked at him with gratitude, though guilt still rested on her shoulders. Later that night, there was a knock on their door. Mama Nala entered with calm steps, her expression firm but warm. "I hope you are comfortable," she said. "The ocean air can be strong at night." "We are fine, Mama," Amara replied quickly. Mama Nala turned her gaze to Kofi. I know you may feel surprised by my presence. Kofi remained respectful. It was unexpected, Mama. She lifted her chin slightly. I came to protect what I gave birth to. A mother's duty does not end when drums stop beating at a wedding. Her words were steady, almost rehearsed. In our tradition, she continued, a mother watches over her daughter even after she crosses into another home. Marriage does not erase blood. Amara nodded slowly, feeling the weight of each sentence. Mama Nala stepped closer to her daughter. Do not forget who stood beside you before any man did. The air grew thick. I am not here to control, she added. I am here because the world changes men. Kofi's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his voice calm. Mama, I have no intention of harming your daughter. She gave him a measured look. Intentions can shift. I have seen it before. In many villages, stories are told of husbands who sweetened their words before marriage and hardened their hearts after. These tales traveled from grandmother to granddaughter like warnings stitched into cloth. The next morning, Mama Nala invited Amara to walk along the shore. The sand was cool beneath their feet. Fishermen pulled in nets nearby. The sky stretched wide above them. My child, Mama Nala began gently, a bride must remember her roots. Marriage is not blindness. I know, Mama, Amara replied. I have seen men change once vows are sealed, she continued. Before marriage, they act like gentle goats. After marriage, some become stubborn bulls. Amara frowned slightly. Kofi is not like that. Mama Nala stopped walking. You believe that now. But belief must be guarded. Her words were not loud, but they were sharp. Back at the hotel, Kofi's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and sighed softly. It was an elder from the community. Ah, Kofi, the old man's voice boomed through the speaker. We hear you have traveled far. How is our daughter? She is well, sir, Kofi replied respectfully. And Mama Nala? She reached safely. Kofi paused for half a second. Yes, sir. Good, the elder said. A young couple must not forget that the village watches. Marriage is not a private forest. It is a public tree. The call ended, but the message remained. Soon, more calls followed. Aunties asking if Mama Nala was comfortable. Cousins checking whether Amara was behaving properly. Each voice carried curiosity wrapped in concern. It was subtle, but clear. The village was present, even at the edge of the sea. That evening, Amara stood alone on the balcony. The waves rolled endlessly, never free from their return to shore. She whispered to herself, why must love feel like a test? Behind her, she could hear her mother laughing softly in the hallway as she spoke on the phone to a relative. Inside the room, Kofi sat quietly, staring at his hands. The honeymoon meant to unite two hearts was slowly becoming a gathering of expectations, fears, and unspoken battles. And like the tide that rises before the storm, tension continued to build, quiet, steady, and impossible to ignore. The ocean breeze was soft that evening, carrying the smell of salt and promise. The young bride and her husband sat by a candlelit table near the shore. The waves moved gently, whispering secrets only lovers could hear. He reached for her hand. Here, he said with a warm smile, there is no village watching. Only you and me. She laughed softly, her eyes shining like the moon on water. But just as their fingers locked and silence wrapped them like a blessing, a familiar voice cut through the calm. My children, her mother called, walking toward them with firm steps. I thought you might need company. The night air can be too cold. The bride's shoulders stiffened. The husband forced a polite smile. It was not the first time. At breakfast, the mother had appeared with herbal tea. During their walk along the beach, she followed, speaking of old memories. Even in the quiet evenings, when love tried to bloom like a night flower, she stood nearby like a drum breaking sacred silence. Small words began to fall from her lips like seeds in dry soil. My daughter, she whispered one afternoon, as they watched the sea, have you noticed how often he checks his phone? A man who is at peace does not hide his screen. The bride frowned. He speaks with his business partners, Mama. The mother sighed deeply. I only speak what I see. Many men change after the wedding songs fade. The words were small, but they carried weight. They settled in the bride's heart and began to grow roots. When her husband stepped away to take a call, her chest tightened. When he sat quietly, watching the sea, she wondered what storms might be hiding behind his silence. Soon, care turned into quiet suspicion. "Who was that?" she asked one evening, trying to keep her voice light. "A friend from the city," he replied gently. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," she said quickly, but her smile no longer reached her eyes. The ocean, once calm as a sleeping child, began to roar. Dark clouds gathered without warning. Waves crashed against the shore with fierce anger. The wind howled through the palm trees, bending them low. The husband stood by the window of their room, watching the storm. "The sea was peaceful yesterday," he murmured. The bride wrapped her arms around herself. "Even the calmest water hides deep currents." Down by the beach, an old fisherman watched the storm with wise eyes. His skin was wrinkled like dried leaves, and his voice carried the weight of many seasons. Seeing the troubled faces of the couple the next morning, he told them a story. "There was once a mother bird," he began, "who loved her chick more than her own wings. When the chick grew strong and tried to fly, the mother held on too tightly. 'The sky is full of danger,' she cried. But because she would not let go, both of them fell from the tree. Love that grips too hard can break what it tries to protect." The bride lowered her head. The husband listened in silence. The old man's eyes rested gently on them before he walked away, leaving the lesson behind like footprints in sand. Days passed, and the bride's laughter slowly faded. Where joy once danced on her lips, guilt now sat heavy. When she walked with her husband, she glanced back, wondering if her mother watched from behind. When she sat alone, she heard her mother's warnings echoing like distant drums. "I do not want to fail either of you," she whispered one night, tears shining in her eyes. Her husband looked at her with quiet pain. "Respect is good," he said softly. "But tell me, my wife, when does respect become surrender?" He lay awake long after she slept. In his heart, he wrestled with a question no young husband wishes to face. To honor tradition was noble. But was he still the head of his home if every step was guided by another's shadow? Meanwhile, in her own room, the mother knelt beside her bed. She clasped her hands tightly. "I have seen too much in this world," she whispered to herself. "Men who smile today and wound tomorrow. I will not let my daughter suffer. Not while I breathe." In her heart, she believed she was building a shield. She did not see that the shield was slowly becoming a wall. Outside, the sea continued its restless song, as if reminding them all that storms do not rise without reason, and they do not leave without change. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the crowded beach. Villagers, tourists, and hotel guests mingled, laughing and clinking glasses, but the young couple felt a weight pressing down upon them. Mama Nala had arrived at the gathering, her presence impossible to ignore. Her eyes, sharp as the hawk's, scanned the crowd until they landed on Kofi. "My son," she began, her voice calm but cutting through the chatter like a flute note in the wind, "tell me, do you truly care for my daughter, or is she a passing jewel in your palm?" Whispers spread like fire. The crowd noticed, curiosity flashing in their eyes. Amara's cheeks burned. Kofi's jaw tightened, yet he did not respond immediately. He took a slow breath, letting the ocean breeze fill the space between them, gathering strength. "Love," he said finally, his voice steady, "cannot grow under constant supervision. My respect for tradition is great, Mama Nala, but my marriage cannot live under your shadow." The mother's lips pressed into a thin line. The air thickened. The waves crashed louder, as if echoing the tension. Amara's heart hammered. She felt herself teetering on a ledge, pulled by two forces she had loved all her life, her mother and her husband. She began, voice trembling. "I cannot. I must." Her courage wavered, but she felt the need for truth rise within her. Gathering all the strength her heart could hold, she stepped forward and asked, "Mama, why did you truly come?" Silence fell. Even the gulls seemed to pause. Conversations stopped mid-word. The world contracted to the three of them, and in that stillness, years of unspoken fear, devotion, and authority hovered like a storm cloud. Mama Nala's eyes widened. Her posture, once tall and unshakable, faltered. For a moment, no words came. Then a shiver passed through her as she felt the weight of the question pressing against her chest, unraveling the invisible chains of control she had worn for so long. Amara's gaze did not waver. She had waited years for this moment, standing at the edge of fear and courage. The crowd could feel the tension, sensing the breaking of a bond that had held silently over generations. Finally, the widow's tears began to fall, warm and unrestrained, sliding down the lines carved by grief and sacrifice. Her hands trembled as she reached toward her daughter. I came," she whispered, voice breaking, "because I was afraid. Afraid that once you were gone, I would be left alone in this world." Amara stepped forward slowly, her own tears glistening. "Mama, love is not possession. I am still your daughter, but I must also be my own woman." Kofi moved closer, taking her hand in his, anchoring her with quiet strength. "Mama Nala," he said gently, "we honor you. But we cannot grow if love is caged." The waves behind them crashed and retreated, as if approving the release. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and crimson, the air carrying the first notes of peace after a storm. In that moment, the authority of tradition, the power of love, and the courage of a daughter converged, leaving an unspoken promise. Hearts could hurt, walls could fall, and even the strongest woman could find release in the act of letting go. Tears streaming, Mama Nala sank to a nearby dune, her face buried in her hands. For the first time in many years, the widow who had never shown weakness allowed herself to weep openly, her heart learning that love need not be a chain, and that sometimes true strength lies in surrender. The room was quiet except for the soft lapping of waves against the shore outside. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the balcony where the three stood. Mama Nala's hands trembled as she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The night he died," she began, eyes clouded with memory, "I became both mother and father. The house was empty, and the silence, it was sharper than any blade. I carried the grief alone, hidden behind my strength, but it never left me." Amara stepped closer, feeling the weight of years compressed into a single breath. "Mama," she murmured, her own heart aching, "I never understood the depth of your sorrow." "I raised you to laugh, to sing, to grow," Mama Nala continued, her voice breaking. "When you were small, you were my only joy, my reason to wake, to cook, to endure. The world outside did not matter. You became my entire life." Kofi's hand rested lightly on Amara's shoulder, offering her a steadying presence. He watched the widow, seeing the raw truth of a heart that had been wounded too early, too deeply. "And yet," Mama Nala whispered, "I feared the emptiness more than anything. The echo of footsteps in an empty house haunted me. I thought, if you leave me, if your laughter moves away from me, who will remain?" Her eyes glistened as she looked at her daughter, a tear tracing the line of a scar she had hidden for decades. "And the old belief, it torments me still, that when a daughter marries, her mother is forgotten. Slowly, quietly, erased from her child's life as though we had never existed." Amara's fingers brushed the hand of her mother. "Mama, I am still here. I always will be." Mama Nala shook her head, shame and fear mixing in her gaze. "I did not come to hurt you. My actions, they were born of love. But love, when afraid, twists. I thought I protected you. Instead, I caged you without knowing." Kofi finally stepped forward, his voice calm but firm, like a river steady against the rocks. "Mama Nala, I honor the sacrifices you made. The love that raised Amara, the nights you spent awake worrying, the strength you carried alone. I do not come to punish, only to speak truth." The widow's gaze lifted, searching his face. "But she is yours now. She belongs to him." "And yet," he said gently, "she belongs to us all. Marriage does not erase a mother's place, nor diminish the bond you share. Boundaries are not rejection, Mama. They are the soil where trust grows, where love can breathe without suffocation. Respect does not ask you to disappear, it asks you to stand alongside, not above." The wind carried the scent of the ocean, mingling with the quiet understanding that settled between them. Mama Nala's shoulders lowered for the first time in years, and a single tear fell freely. In the stillness, the truth was clear. Love could hurt, love could confine, but love tempered by trust and respect could also heal. Amara stepped forward, taking both hands. "Mama, I am your daughter, and I am a wife. You are not replaced. You are part of everything I am and will become." Mama Nala nodded slowly, her tears now a river of relief and release. Kofi smiled gently, a man who chose understanding over anger, seeing a family's bond stretched, but not broken, by the trials of fear and devotion. And in the quiet night, beneath the watchful moon and the ever-constant ocean, 3 hearts stood together, scarred, honest, and ready to begin again. The night had passed, leaving the sky heavy with clouds that mirrored the tension still lingering in hearts. Slowly, the first cracks of light pierced the darkness, the storm above beginning to ease. Mama Nala stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the sky clear, each silver streak a mirror to the softening of her own heart. Down below, the ocean, once roaring as if echoing her fears and anger, now moved in gentle rhythms. The waves whispered, calm and forgiving, brushing the shore with quiet patience. The sound reminded her that even the fiercest tempests could return to peace. She observed Amara holding Kofi's hand, the warmth between them unmistakable. Not a betrayal, but proof that her daughter had grown, strong, loving, and ready to build a home of her own. Mama Nala felt a pang, a mix of loss and pride, understanding that her role had shifted, but had not ended. A heavy choice weighed on her. She could cling, trying to control what could no longer be contained, and risk losing everything. Or she could release, surrendering the illusion of possession for the quiet freedom of love without chains. As dawn brushed the horizon with soft gold, she made her decision. Her life had been one of sacrifice and devotion, but this act would be different. It would be one of dignity, surrender, and trust. Without a word, she moved through the quiet halls of the resort. The village's eyes were not upon her, the gossips yet to speak. She left with the first light, unseen and unjudged, choosing the strength in silence over the spectacle of confrontation. Before departing completely, she placed a note on Amara's bedside table. Her hands shook slightly as she wrote, each word a blessing, a prayer, a surrender. "May your love grow strong, your hearts remain open, and your life be full of joy. I release you, my daughter, not with bitterness, but with all the love I have. Walk freely, and remember me kindly." Then, as the sun rose fully over the calm sea, Mama Nala stepped into the world beyond the resort. The sand softened beneath her feet, the wind carrying away the last of her fear. She had let go, and in that letting go, she found a peace that the storms of life could never take. The house was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar, as though it had grown larger while she was away. Each hallway echoed her own footsteps, each room whispered memories of absence. Mama Nala walked slowly, touching the worn wooden frames, feeling the emptiness that had always frightened her. She had feared loneliness more than anything, but now, in the stillness, she faced it not with anger, but with a searching heart. Sitting by the window, she let the cool evening breeze wash over her, carrying scents of earth and rain from the streets below. She thought about the fear that had guided her, the quiet ways she had tried to hold her daughter close. "Perhaps," she murmured to herself, "I have mistaken care for control." Reflection became her companion, and for the first time in many years, bitterness had no place in her heart. As the sky turned deep indigo, she gathered with women she had known all her life. They sat on mats beneath the stars, their laughter soft but knowing, their voices carrying stories of sorrow and endurance. "It is not weakness to grieve," one older widow said, "it is strength to rise afterward." Mama Nala nodded, listening, sharing, and feeling the bonds of sisterhood weave again around her. In time, she began to guide the younger widows who walked paths she once knew all too well. She spoke gently of resilience, of finding light even when shadows fall, of transforming grief into wisdom. "Your life is yours to shape," she told them. "Hold love, but do not cage it. Stand firm, but know when to bend." Her lessons became a shield for those yet learning, a bridge between fear and courage. Meanwhile, Amara and Kofi returned to the pace of their lives, their honeymoon now reclaimed from the shadows that had tainted it. Laughter returned like the first rays of dawn, gentle and golden. They walked hand in hand along the beach, speaking openly, dreaming freely. Amara understood at last that respect for her mother did not mean surrendering her own voice or her marriage. Kofi, observing the delicate balance of family and culture, learned patience. He realized that the roots of tradition, strong and ancient as they were, could not be forced into neat lines. They needed care, gentle guidance, and understanding. Together, they discovered not only the joy of new love, but the wisdom of harmony between hearts and heritage, a rhythm that neither silence nor confrontation could disturb. The wind carried voices through the village like restless spirits, whispers that traveled faster than the eyes could follow. Mothers shook their heads, elders murmured quietly, and neighbors exchanged glances that weighed heavy with curiosity. "Why did Mama Nala leave so quietly?" one woman asked, her voice low. "And yet, the bride seems at peace. What has changed?" Each question, each speculation, fed the restless energy of a community used to knowing every heartbeat of its people. Days later, the family gathered beneath the open sky, mats spread and drums resting silently by the elders' feet. Mama Nala rose slowly, her presence commanding quiet without a word. She turned toward her daughter and son-in-law, raising her hands in a gesture of blessing. "I honor your union," she declared. "May your love grow strong, may your home be a place of laughter and trust. Go forward with my heart at peace." The murmurs fell into silence. Doubt dissolved, replaced by awe and respect. The lesson did not end with applause. It settled into the minds of all who watched. A child is a gift, not a possession. Love that cages will one day break its own bars. True motherhood is not measured by control, but by raising someone who returns by choice, whose heart holds its own wings yet still seeks home. Later, beneath the great ancestral tree whose roots had absorbed centuries of joy and sorrow, Mama Nala stood alone. The sun dappled through its leaves, casting shadows that danced gently across her face. Her daughter came, walking freely, laughter in her eyes, not from duty, but from love. In the distance, the drums beat softly, not as warning, but in quiet harmony, a rhythm that spoke of respect, freedom, and the enduring strength of family.